Okay, good morning members and welcome to this meeting of the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee. This meeting is being live streamed and the recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance for the duration of this virtual meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write speak in the Teams chat function and you will be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so we can deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member is to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period, or can you write leave in the Teams chat function and then join, and this will allow us to monitor member presence. We have several important reports to consider today, and I anticipate we will deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. Item number 1 on the agenda is surrounding apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Nick, can I ask you to provide the surrounding apologies indicating who is participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of apologies, we've had none this morning. Participating remotely on Microsoft Teams, we have councillors Hagman, Giusti, Lever, McGregor and Nicholson, and in the room for the benefit of people watching, we've got yourself, Councillor Wilson. We've also got Councillors Brodie, Campbell, Hislop, McClelland, Sloan and Thompson.
Can we just double check? I can see Councillor Nicholson's in the room, but you said that he was on Teams and Councillor McClelland isn't here.
Okay, that must be my mistake, Chair, because I can indeed confirm that Councillor Nicholson is sitting in the room before me.
I'm here as well. I'm here too.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, obviously the list I've got before me doesn't indicate that, but I'm happy to confirm that you are here on Teams. Thank you.
Right, and I can see that Councillor Fairbairn and Davidson are also saying that they're present on Teams, so Nick, can I just ask you to repeat all of that and then hopefully everybody will be satisfied that we have accounted for everyone.
Okay, so on Teams, and correct me as I go through, we've got Councillors Hagman, Fairbairn, Giusti, Lever, McGregor and Murray, and I'm sure you mentioned another, Chair.
Councillor Fairbairn, and I see that Jane Maitland has also just indicated that she's
Councillor Maitland. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And now that we know exactly who's here, I'm happy to agree to the remote participation of members. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? Gail?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to declare an interest in item 5. As you'll be aware, as Consular Resources spokesperson, I'm involved nationally in a lot of what's contained within this report, but as it doesn't impact on the settlement that Dumfries and Galloway will specifically get, I'll stay for the debate, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Thank you, Chairman. Item 12, proposed community asset transfer, plot of land at Keller Home. My partner is employed by Dumfries and Galloway Small Communities Housing Trust, which advised the organisation in question. However, they're not a beneficiary of the decision, and the nature of the interest is such that I believe that I can remain for consideration of the item. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No, we'll move to item number 3 then. It is the minute of the previous meeting on the 6th of October 2020. Can we approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of October? Yep. Excellent. Item number 4 on the agenda is Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee review of internal financial procedures and procurement standing orders. Members are aware that this review was one of the many streams of work that full Council agreed to take forward at our meeting in June in response to a report on the 4G Trunk Road contract. Members will also recall that we moved quickly on this matter with the very next full Council meeting in July, agreeing a scope and the timeline for carrying out our review. As in line with that timeline, today is the 17th of November and we are at the end of that process of agreeing the final recommendations, the recommendations of which will go to full Council in December. I'd like to thank elected members who have taken part in the workshop process. Some were long with a great deal of information. However, I feel that this review has been a success in more ways than one, and that out of the workshop process today, we have in front of us a set of robust recommendations to take forward, not just through the Finance Procurement Service, but across the whole Council. At full Council in June, many members felt that the trust between officers and elected members had been damaged, and I did not disagree. But I'm confident that this review and the recommendations presented here today go a long way in helping to repair that trust. Finally, I would like to put on record my thanks to all those officers who worked with elected members during the review process. A number of presentations during our workshops were meaty and as such took a considerable amount of time to collate and prepare. I felt that during the workshop progress, a number of vigorous discussions were held on a number of issues which made the review process stronger and has helped in producing this robust set of recommendations. In terms of the report in front of us today, there are two issues. Firstly, the evidence that we have heard between the last FPT committee and this committee, and secondly, the review recommendations. And so I will take each of these in turn. Can I first of all invite any members who have questions or comments on the workshop feedback from the 23rd of October and the 6th of November, as detailed in Appendix 1 and 2. Elaine?
No, I hadn't indicated I wanted to speak.
Okay, Jane?
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Yes, Chairman, it is with respect to page 25 of the extra papers. I just want to make a note that at the bottom of page 25, it looks as if the workshop wanted to strike out a reference at the investigation report notes that oversight should have been provided by the former DG First Management Committee. Can I say that in terms of governance, actually, the workshop can't do that, and I don't think it really would want to. When this comes to full council, what I really want to say is that I want to commend members for actually getting a real grip of this particular problem and taking it forwards in the form of an independent review. Because we've done that, we will get down to the bottom of this. And I think actually to remove reference to the management committee and the fact that the management committee did ask but maybe was not effective in minuting its requests for further information, I think the attempt to remove that sentence from the investigation report is not helpful. So that is my comment to be made about the workshop, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, Jane. I'm not going to rehash that conversation. I think we had quite a long conversation, and my recollection of it is similar to yours, where it was probably the wording, but very much reflecting a number of the issues that you had mentioned there. Is there any further comments from members on the workshop feedback on the 23rd of October or the 6th of November, which is outlined in recommendations 1 and 2? No. So members therefore happy if we first of all just consider the evidence and information presented in recommendation 1 and then agree that this should be added to the evidence gathered for the committee's review. Happy to agree those? Yep. Okay. I'll therefore move on to the review recommendations as set out in Appendix 3. Peter Lewis, who has been our independent expert, is here to assist us with any discussion, and I will open up to member debate. Any comments from members on this? Nope. Okay, I will move to the recommendations then. And that is that, first of all, we consider and agree the analysis, findings and emerging recommendations from the Finance Procurement Transformation Committee review to improve the Council's internal financial procedures and procurement standing orders as set out in Appendix 3, and that they will be presented to full Council on the 17th of December. And are we also happy to agree that, subject to 2.3, that to note that the work is underway to progress and to progress action and prepare a detailed implementation plan to fully address those recommendations. Happy to agree? Ivor?
Chair, my understanding Councillor Crullers was going to raise an issue with regard to oversight by the political side of the actual process, whether it's a subcommittee or this committee actually to look at the procurement of various things going forward. I don't see his name up there, whether he's maybe struggling. He did fall out of a conversation this morning and online. I think there's a feeling that at the start of this, at least, there should be more political oversight, just to give us a flavour of how it's working, and whether we could set up a subcommittee of this committee, maybe just to take it forward for, even if it's a short life one, for a year, to actually study and make sure that everything's being embedded in, just to take it forward. And that's something I think we should possibly consider, or ask full council to consider when it goes before them.
I suppose within the recommendations as laid out at the moment, there is a clear, not necessarily at the beginning I observe, but certainly within the next year, we would make sure that the full FPT committee and indeed all elected members have the opportunity to take part in an evidence session, and there would be a report to this committee in December next year. I absolutely take the point about we need to make sure that there's that oversight, and I completely agree on that point. And obviously, there will be a detailed action plan produced by officers, and I think it's maybe at that point that may go to full council, but it may instead come to FPT committee in the new year. And I think at that point will be an opportunity for members to say if there's any other methods in which we think that needs to be taken forward. But I'm quite clear that we would be taking reports to this committee as often as possible and as often as required to oversee that, the implementation of all this.
I look forward to seeing that. That should cover it for now, and we look forward to the report early next year to see if we need to ramp that up any.
Excellent. Jane?
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's with respect to, and I'm sorry, I'm coming back to it, I apologise, but I was scrabbling to my notes and I couldn't find what I wanted to say. It's just a question really about the whole business about openness and transparency. I mean, what we're trying to do is make certain that the public knows that we have a completely open and transparent method of procurement. And I would suggest that that the contract register and the openness that is beginning to be shown, which we see in a later report on this agenda, is absolutely fine. But you know, it's not the really big contracts that that upset the apple cart and the public's belief in things. It's the small ones, and so I want to be absolutely sure that we will capture the means of being certain that the public will be able to examine the small contracts and the small transactions that are made. And so if I can be absolutely sure that that will come through as well.
Yeah, I think that was just a comment, but echo it. Ian?
Sorry, Chair, just couldn't get to my mic there. Just so I didn't get into the meeting for about the first 12 minutes, Chairman, just for the record. For some reason, I know it happened to Councillor Johnson and also Councillor McClelland, she wouldn't let us in, said that the meeting had been cancelled, so I missed the bulk of the debate. But just to, I caught the very end of what Ivor said, just to add support in regards to what Ivor's saying. I think what you've decided is a potential route forward in either January or February time, but I think that there is certainly support came across for the Conservative group, and Ivor's outlined that. And as far as should there be a standalone procurement committee, yes, it probably should, or something like that, and it should come from this committee itself under the circumstances. So I'm not exactly sure what Ivor said, so hopefully I'm not repeating too much of it, but I think under the circumstances we've had a good eye on this particular subject matter. It's been really good review, to say the least. It's been well resourced and appropriately resourced in order to get the proper outcomes. So just that particular point, Chairman, I want to emphasise that. I think it is important, and in order to take it seriously, even if it is for, I think Ivor maybe said a year, but even for the next 2 to 3 years, keep a strong focus, and that's outlined within the recommendations. We need to keep a close eye on this, make sure that the members are up to speed. So that's the current members of this council, the incoming, the council coming in. So for the next 2 to 3 years, that would cover that period, and I very strongly feel that it would be back on track and have a good fit for purpose procurement system that's in place. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for those comments, Ian. I think Ivor was arguing for something slightly different. He was talking about a sort of short life, sort of working subcommittee to oversee some of these recommendations, rather than actually a procurement subcommittee, acknowledging that obviously the FPT review, yes, largely to do with procurement, but not entirely about procurement. But I think, as long as we're content, I'm quite clear that reports will come to FPT committee as often as is required and as often as members would like. And certainly either at full council we'll see that implementation plan, or if not, in the new year. And that will come to FPT committee. So I've got no further members wanting to come in. Are we happy to, first of all, consider and agree the analysis, findings and emerging recommendations from the FPT committee review to improve the council's internal financial procedures and procurement standing orders as set out in Appendix 3, to be presented to full council on the 17th of December 2020. And recommendation 4, subject to 2.3, note that work is underway to progress action and prepare a detailed implementation plan to fully address the recommendations. Happy to agree? Thank you. Item number 5 today is the Council Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 2020-21 for period end the 30th of September 2020, quarter 2. This report provides a summary of forecast expenditure for the Council up to the end of September 2020, including a further update on the main financial implications associated with COVID-19. The report builds on information presented at the previous meeting of this committee, and we should note the update on key issues, impacts and projections provided at paragraph 3.4. The report provides us with an overall assessment of the implications for the financial year and the approaches to address the financial implications at 3.12. We're also advised of the outlook for future years and information information on the related to the UK and Scottish budget announcements. Paul Garrett is here to assist if members have any questions. I believe there has been some developments in terms of the Scottish Government budget intentions, so I'll pass to Paul in the first instance to update members.
Thanks, Chair. Just to update members, we've reflected in the report that it had been anticipated that the Scottish Government's budget announcement for next year would be made early in February. We received updated information last week which indicated that has now been pulled forward very slightly to the 28th of January. So that's helpful, but obviously it's still significantly later than when budget announcements are usually made, so that will have implications for the Council's own budget setting process, but we're bringing out a full report on that process and updates on savings available and other issues to the meeting of full Council in December. Thank you.
Okay, I will open up to member debate. Is there any questions or comments from members? Ivor?
Chair, just a comment on the fiscal flexibilities, I suppose. I'm not really keen on taking them up if we don't need to. It's like, I think somebody described it as kicking the can further down the road. And I think we should look to see if we can find other ways to cover that rather than go there. That should be our last resort. If I was going forward, I always think you should keep up your debt repayments because if you don't, you just seem to get into a deeper hole. So if you can do that, I think we should. But that was just the only comment I had.
Fair comment. Paul, is there anything you want to say in reply to that? Although I think it was more a statement from Ivor.
I'd agree with those comments as reflected in the report. It's not something based on the current situation that would anticipate this council needing to use it, and I think it should be viewed as a last resort because it would push the burden of paying for things into future years, which would obviously impact on our ability to provide essential services in that period. So I think absolutely treat it as a a last resort, but it's something we need to be conscious of. If things change significantly, we need to look at that again, but that's certainly not something I'm anticipating at this stage.
Elaine?
Thanks. Just a comment, I suppose, on the last point. I don't think we would be eligible for any of these flexibilities anyway. So I don't, even if we did want to, and I would very much concur with both, what Ivor said and what Paul said, that we shouldn't be using them. I don't think we would actually be eligible to apply for them anyway. My comment really was more to be about recommendation 2.4. My understanding now is that the local government financial settlement is likely to be delayed until the end of January rather than the beginning of February. And I feel that the wording of that recommendation is a bit incorrect, because it's not the Scottish Government's 2021-22 budget announcement which determines our budget setting. It's the local government finance settlement, and I think that recommendation probably ought to say that rather than the budget. Thanks.
Paul, is there anything you want to say on the back of those comments?
No, really, that was asking members just to note that information, that the Scottish Government's budget announcement would be delayed, and obviously I've updated that this morning, but fully recognise the leader's point that the more detailed issue that influences our budget setting considerations is the local government finance settlement, which will be announced as part of that Scottish Government budget announcement. So if it's helpful to members, no problem with that recommendation being clarified along those lines.
John?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with the leader just mentioned about 2.4. If she wants a seconder to move that, I'll second.
Okay, I've got no further questions or comments from members, so I will move to the recommendations. Are we happy to first of all note 1, 2 and 3 on block? Yep. And then on the leader's comments, change recommendation 4 to note the indications that the local government finance settlement 2021-22 announcement is now likely to be delayed until the last week of January 2021, and the implications for the Council's budget process as summarised at paragraphs 3.23 to 3.25. Happy with that? Thank you. Item number 6 is the Finance and Procurement Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for 2020-21, Quarter 2. This report gives members an overview of the financial performance of the Finance and Procurement Service for the period to September 2020. I am pleased to note the projected position for the service that a balanced budget will be delivered. Paul Garrett and Gillian Ross are here to assist if members have any questions. Is there any questions from members? Nope. Okay. I'll proceed to the recommendations. Are members happy to note 1 and 2 on block? Thank you. Item number 7 is the Capital Investment Strategy Monitoring 2020-21 for Quarter 2. This report provides members with an update on the financial and physical progress of the Capital Investment Strategy for the current financial year. We were advised in October that COVID-19 has and continues to have a significant impact on the strategy, primarily due to the restrictions on sites and ongoing public health requirements which have slowed progress, with projected timescales being extended. We're also provided with a progress on the capital strategy transformation within the report. Members will recall we agreed a work plan earlier this year at this committee. Members are also being asked to implement a revised financial code, which has been trialled within the Council already. The updated code seeks to provide greater clarity on delegated authority and to set clearer parameters where member approval is required, with the intention of strengthening monitoring and reporting requirements. Karen Donaldson is here to assist if members have any questions, and I'll now open it up for member debate. Any questions from members? Elaine?
Thanks, Chair. I'm not on the Communities Committee, but my understanding of the situation, which is reported on page 61, Appendix 3, regarding the White Sands flood protection and public realm, was not that the committee had reported that the notification process had been delayed until at least December. My understanding was that the Communities Committee had actually voted to note that the six-week formal notification process had commenced on the 1st of October, but that decision by committee was recalled by the Conservative group, and so that really is incorrect reporting on what actually happened in terms of that project.
Paul? Sorry, Karen.
Sorry, I don't know. Karen, have you got something on this?
So it was just to say that was the information that we had been passed, but happy to follow that up and clarify to members if that would be helpful.
Yep, that would be great.
I think the members of the committee present who would know what actually happened at the Communities Committee, whereas they had been asked to note that something had started, and that the decision of the committee to do that was then overturned through a recall to full council at the next full council meeting.
Yeah, no, certainly somebody on Communities Committee, I know that we did agree to that, but obviously subsequently it has been recalled. Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. It's just that my old something that I keep talking about here. It's Appendix 6. I think Paul could probably guess what I'm going to ask. It's about the definition of capital. In the past, it's something that's been a wee bit fluid, and it quite clearly says on, I think it says it's page 50. I'm working on the online thing at the minute. I'm finding it a wee bit tricky, but the one that I'm going to go back to is the IT equipment for the schools, which was being put in the revenue budget, and quite clearly, if we're following that definition, it should be capital.
That's not my understanding. I'm happy to have a look at that further. Obviously, there's different types of IT investment. The information we had was that the works that we recently agreed, there was a mixture of both capital and revenue. Where actually what we're suggesting was we fund it from revenue, which we can do, whether it's both. You can do that whether it's capital expenditure as well through CFCR. So that was the approach that we reflected in the report that went to last month's meeting of this committee, but happy to look at the detail of that further with Councillor Johnson if that would be helpful.
Malcolm, are you content with that?
Yeah, I kind of lost the last wee bit of it, to be quite honest, but if Paul was mindful, I wouldn't mind having a discussion with him separately about this particular matter.
Yep, no, happy with that, Chair, thanks.
Okay, Jane?
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. It's just the issue on the White Sands. As I said in the chat, I think it's probably accurate. The information in the report is accurate, but perhaps not up to date. So I wonder if I could just have clarification as to where it stands in terms of governance, please.
Nick?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yes, the decision. Well, we have received a valid recall for the White Sands matter, and it is listed for consideration at Council on the 17th of December. I think a contact is being made with the Scottish Government to see whether there was any flexibility in terms of adjusting the consultation period if anything material occurred during the consultation period. I'm not aware that a definitive response has been received as yet, but we'll have that information for Council in December.
Jane, are you happy with that clarification?
Fine, thank you.
Ronnie?
Chair, I'm not a member of that committee, but my understanding was, as the leaders, that a decision was taken. That decision was then recalled, but there was no mention within that decision or the recall about a certain date. So it could be any date, it could be tomorrow. You know, the leader decides to call a council meeting. And another thing, just when we're on, you know, I know that, you know, a lot of people do use this within committees, but, you know, I'm not aware of this chat that goes on. It's like, to me, it's like me chatting away to Ivor about something that within this committee room. So I would, you know, it's not part of the committee procedures or decision-making process, because not everybody has access to that or, you know, sight of it, if you want.
Fair comment. Any other questions or comments from members on this? Ivor?
Chair, it's with regard to the financial code number 22. I note within the body of the report it states that it was tweaked a wee bit and a couple of amendments were put in as the year went on. Can you just clarify that those amendments have been through the same sort of process so that there's no unforeseen circumstances from the amendments? We were looking at it to make sure that there weren't any unforeseen issues, but just to make sure that the new amendments aren't causing anything, or have they been through the process as well?
Paul or Karen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to clarify that the sort of main change that was made was around sort of expedited procedures for when an urgent decision is needed in advance of committee. Like, for example, if an example was provided if they were doing works on a road and then ended up needing sort of further structural work, that they couldn't just leave that for 6 weeks until the next committee, that the chair and vice chair, in consultation with the director, could take that decision in exceptional circumstances was the main change. And I think that was the kind of, like, as part of the implementation or the sort of pilot implementation of the code, was that the capital strategy group, which is made up of all the kind of lead officers for the projects and asset classes, have been reviewing this code on a quarterly basis as to any kind of issues that it's flagging up. So we're hopeful that through going through that process, and obviously the final code has been through that group and the Strategic Asset Board internally before coming here today. So we are confident that we've sort of picked up any potential issues, and we're hopeful that we can progress forward without any significant issues, and hope that it provides members with the further transparency that they were looking for.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I've got no other members wanting to come in, so, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It was just on the last point that was asked there about the 250k homologated spend, effectively, potentially. I was just sort of wondering, at that sort of level, would that not then trigger a number of procurement requirements, if you like, at the appropriate level of whatever our procurement processes end up being? So it's just, if that's a rushed, or not a rushed, a hasty decision, if you like, in between committees, which would normally be, say, about 3 months, I'm just sort of wondering how that fits into what we understand about proper procurement.
I mean, absolutely, and the code is clear that the procurement standing orders must be followed, and in any circumstance where those expedited procedures need to be used, that would definitely be a factor or a consideration in what action is taken. But as I said, it's sort of crystal clear in the report that the procurement standing orders must be followed.
I think as well, given the work that Karen's been leading on with the Capital Strategy Group, that certainly there would be no intention to use those expedited procedures, and actually the work in the Capital Strategy Group is very much about making sure that forward planning is a part of that, and that that people are mindful of the committee and full council diary, so that they can bring reports in a timely manner in line with the various other procedures, and Stephen's mentioned procurement there. So I've got no other comments from members. So are we happy to agree 1, 2 and 3 on block? Yeah. Okay. Item number 8 is a transformation programme, income generation fees and charges work programme. This report updates the transformation work. It updates the committee on the transformation work on income generation fees and charges. The report reflects the programme we agreed in March this year and the steps taken to advance this, but also clearly reflects the impact that the pandemic has had, not just on the programme work, but the significant and likely long-lasting impact on the income local authorities such as ours can generate from a range of activities, and the fundamental need to think again about how we consider this post-COVID. Richard Greaveson is here to assist members with any questions. I'll open it up to members. Gail.
Thanks, Chair. I have no problems with the report, and I think it's inevitable given the situation we've been in that this is not achievable. Absolutely not. I'm just looking at 3.6 of the report, which is sort of highlighting the pressures and ongoing sort of additional control measures that are having an impact on uptake and usage, particularly within leisure. And I just wonder, maybe just an overview from Richard since the report was written, are we beginning to see a bit more, a few more people coming back into our leisure facilities now? And I'm very aware that people have been cooped up for months, that they're now beginning to value their health and well-being perhaps slightly more than they would have done a year ago. I'm also very aware that a lot of the private gyms within the area have seen a marked increase in attendance since they've been able to reopen, particularly for personal training and individual sessions. So much so that I think there's one gym in Dumfries and Galloway that's looking to expand quite considerably because its client base has shifted upwards at quite a radical level. So I'm just beginning to think that within this transformation programme, we should be looking at what services we're currently delivering and what we need for the future, and just trying to sort of future-proof what we should be delivering and what we should be allowing the private sector to deliver. Because as I say, I'm seeing within the private sector a marked increase in attendance, and I'm surprised that that's not replicated across our leisure facilities. So it was just to see if there was any sort of increase since the report was written. Thank you, Chair.
Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor McGregor. I think it's fair to say that having looked at the performance of facilities thus far, we've got a mixed bag. Some facilities are performing well, but only to the level and extent to which they have now a reduced capacity as a consequence of the control measures and the social distancing requirements and the space available. There will be a report to the Communities Committee early in the new year that will give a full detailed breakdown of the performance of these facilities and the demand against the current numbers and space available within these facilities. On the second point, Councillor McGregor, I think you're absolutely right. As we move forward eventually from response to renew, I think there's a real opportunity to reevaluate, reintroduce innovative and creative ways of delivering more efficient, effective and economic services, and the response, renew and recovery team will work with each department to help and support them through that process.
I think that's really helpful. I'll look forward to the report at Communities in the new year. Thank you.
I've got no other members wanting to come in, but I have said privately, more than happy to put it on the record. I do think this is one of the best bits of work that's been done on income generation and fees and charges within the council, and I do think it is a shame that all that hard work that was put in by Richard will be delayed or not come to fruition because of COVID, because it was a really good piece of work that has been done through this programme, but hopefully in due course it will be back on track. So moving to the recommendations, are members happy to note 1 and 2 in block? Thank you. Agenda item number 9 is the Procurement and Commission Performance Update Financial Year 2020-21, Quarter 1 and Quarter 2. This report provides an overview of the key procurement activity for Quarters 1 and Quarter 2 of this financial year. The report highlights the amended approaches to work during COVID-19 restrictions, and in particular the support being provided to the PPE Hub, as well as progression of some of the members of the team to their accreditation and professional qualifications. We are also provided with information on the savings identified through procurement activity. Steve Atherton is here to assist if members have any questions, and I will now open it up to members. And we don't have any members wanting to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. Jane?
Sorry, I got my fingers and thumbs all muddled up. Yes, please. Could we possibly have some help on the suppliers development and engagement, which has all now got to be online? And I notice it's we haven't managed to attract an enormous number of people. I wonder if we could have some feedback on how we're going to improve this, because actually it should be much better and easier for potential suppliers to come and listen to us and simply dip in and out of their work and do everything online. And the second actual question that I've got, Adam, is with respect to the rationalisation of systems, and the bottom of page 92, which is talking about social care. I'm a little concerned. I mean, I don't know whether I'm reading this right or wrong, but the commitment accounting for social care is incredibly important, and I thought we'd stitched that up. So is it already happening in social care that we have commitment accounting through a package? Because I see that we're not using that in terms of two exceptions: social care and fleet parts. So that's just a couple of things, please.
Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'll let Paul answer the bit on commitment accounting, but if I deal with the supplier engagement, as we discussed in the actual review, we're building a plan now to be able to really run supplier surgeries, where not only do we tell them what is coming up, and it will be available online as well for them to see for their own accord, but tell them what is coming up, but also to support them in actually completing forms, completing the information that they need in order to register and all those sorts of things. So we're building on what has already been there, but in a far more proactive way, because I think that's the bit that's been missing. I absolutely agree, Jane. I think online is going to work for us well, but we're working up that program as part of the implementation of the recommendations from the review carried out by yourselves. If I hand over to Paul, he may be able to answer the commitment accounting on social care.
Yep, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm for Councillor Maitland, social care hasn't been left out in terms of this improvement process. It's actually the fact that through the Mosaic system, we already had effective arrangements in place for monitoring and commitment accounting for social care services. So it's because those were already in place prior to the RSS project that's been shown as an exception in the report here.
Okay, I have no other members wanting to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. And are we happy to note the update on the Council's procurement function and the activities carried out during Q1 and Q2? Agreed, thank you. Item number 10 is a Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for 2020-21. This report is a requirement of the SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management, which the Council signed up to in 2010 and has complied with since. The report sets out the transactions and debt performance for the period 1st of April to 30th of September. Karen Donaldson is here to assist if members have any questions, and I'll open it up to members. Ivor.
Chair, I note that we had the increase last year of, was it 1% on the Public Works Loan Board rates, and there are cheaper opportunities elsewhere. Does Karen see the chance that that might be reversed, and we'll see the rates coming back to where they were this time last year, so that the 1% might be taken back off and making them more competitive in the market just now?
Karen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. As I said in the report, the Public Works and Loans Board issued a consultation that closed in July about sort of the council's sort of feelings towards the increase in the implications it was having, and certainly there seems to be appetite to reverse that decision, so long as councils can demonstrate that they're not borrowing for sort of commercial and investment type projects, which obviously in Scotland that's not allowed. So certainly all Scottish local authorities are effectively lobbying for that increase to be reversed. We had expected a decision on that by now, but as things stand at the moment, we don't have that confirmation, but we're hopeful that we'll get the outcome of that consultation soon. And obviously, for, as I said in the report this year, we're not anticipating a requirement to take out any longer term borrowing, but obviously from sort of next year onwards, we will need to start looking at that again. So hopefully by that time, we'll have that decision on what happens with that rate going forward.
Ronnie?
Thank you, Chair. It's more a comment. This a number of members out with the administration have previously raised concerns about the level of debt in the council. I hope this paper now reassures them as it displays a debt reduction.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from members? No. We will move to the recommendations then, and are members happy to note the transactions and debt performance for the period 1st of April 2020 to the 30th of September 2020 as detailed in the appendix. Okay. Item number 11 is the implementation of Financial Code 11 debt write-offs. This report is brought forward to provide details of debt written off under delegated procedures over the 6-month period to the 30th of September 2020 for member scrutiny. Details of all write-offs are reported to this committee for scrutiny twice yearly. The report sets out the conditions for a debt to be written off as not recoverable and the efforts which are made for debt. Members should note that despite a debt being written off, where circumstances subsequently change, the Council does pursue debts previously written off, and the report contains examples of where this has been done successfully. Members have received a further briefing on a particular entry last night, which will hopefully assist deliberations. Lindsay Wilson is here to help members with any questions, and I'll now open it up to member debate. Ronnie?
Thank you, Chair. It's very helpful that we got further legal advice and it clarified the position of the police. I thought we were going to have to send in the bailiffs to them, but that is now not necessary.
Ivor?
Chair, similar comments to Councillor Nicholson. I thought they were maybe bankrupt. The people running them didn't know how to finance it or something, but it's good to hear that it was just a misunderstanding, seemingly. I hope there's no other misunderstandings out there that this council has taken on whereby there's no prospect of recovery of any outstanding debt.
Okay, Lindsay, do you want to add anything to that?
I would hope that there isn't, but never say never. We do have very rigorous processes with our debt recovery. There's our sales ledger team concentrate on that particular aspect as one of the important sort of arms of the work they do, and we do liaise very, very closely with the services that raise the sales ledger invoices in the first place. So we try to ensure that the invoices that we do send out are obviously legitimate, and more so if there is any sort of issues, then as I say, we follow the sort of debt recovery processes that are outlined in the note to the appendix to the report. So we hope that there's nothing out there that is like that. But as you say, I would be foolish to say I'm not all knowing of everything, but I'm pretty convinced that we're pretty much on top of all the sort of debt that's there. It's always a very difficult sort of subject because certain aspects, some of the clients, especially in the sort of social work sort of sphere, ultimately once they've sort of if they're paying for things like especially home care and kind of care at home, that type of activity, it does eat into their sort of into their monies, and it gets this a situation where we try and handle, especially that type of debt in a sensitive manner. But it's still monies owing to the council. But I think for those members that have been on finance, procurement, transformation, or equivalent committees, you'll know that that's one area that there does tend to be sort of debt and obviously the associated write-offs that do occur with that specific instance.
Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think we can take reassurance from the fact that we've got strong processes in place for debt recovery. I think part of the issue with this one might have been where the debt actually lay. So if we don't get that right, we can follow all the processes we like, but we'll be barking up the wrong tree, if you like. So I think the briefings really helped clarify that, and maybe that's something we just need to check that we're following the right. I think it was Section 87 of the Civic Government Scotland Act. So I mean, if we aim at the right target, we should get the right result. Thank you.
Jane.
Perhaps, sorry, Chair.
Lindsay, come in.
I was going to say, I'll just give you a little overview of what we do in billing order and payments. We created that section in 2017, and one of the posts we set up was a credit controller paralegal, and that particular person's helped rejuvenate our sort of debt collection sort of procedures, and it's been very, very successful in chasing up debt. But as I say, also we've forged very kind of close links with legal services to progress any sort of, I always describe as maybe awkward debts, but we also chase up services regularly to ensure that any bad debt doesn't lie in the services accounts for too long, and it's properly written off in line with sort of Financial Code 11. So I like to think we are pretty much on top of debt collection, and I would say at the same time, I would say we try to handle it sensitively where it's required, but if we've got to be firm and hard, then we are. It's monies that's owed out there to the council, and it's we like to ensure that the council gets its money wherever possible.
Jane.
Thanks, Adam. It's with respect to the overpaid housing benefit, which unfortunately obviously went on for 18 years. And I mean, I can see that the system must have known about the other adult but couldn't connect up and recognise that that arguably the benefit should not have been being paid. So I just want to know whether we've learnt from that particular problem and thought about how we can make sure that this doesn't happen again. It's quite a chunk.
Lindsay.
He's on mute.
Lindsay, you're on mute.
Apologies, Chair. I didn't realise I was on mute there. I'm saying I have my colleague Lorna Campbell, who's the Wellbeing and Revenues Manager, on this particular call as well. Lorna and her team look after the council tax, the non-domestic rates, and also housing benefit. So I think she'd probably be better placed to maybe respond to that question. Are you able to, Lorna, please?
Yes, thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Chair. Yes, we have this particular overpayment. It is a housing association where we receive a rent file. So because the claimant hadn't originally declared on the form that they were joint tenant and would receive a direct rent file as confirmation of rent, it wasn't picked up earlier. However, we have since put systems in place to cross-check anything that details a rent file. The second person was on the claim, but it was registered as a non-dependent rather than the joint tenant, so we knew they were there, but because of the income makeup of the applicant, we didn't need to check any further details. But as I said, we have now systems in place to make sure we cross-check that with the housing associations involved, so we can pick up any other cases that might occur like this.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I've got no other members wanting to come in, so I will move to the recommendations. Are members happy to note and scrutinise 1 and 2 en bloc? Yep. Okay, item number 12 is a proposed community asset transfer for a plot of land at Keller Home. This report presents members with a proposed community asset transfer for a plot of land at Niviston Road, Keller Home, detailed in the appendix to the Kirkconnell and Keller Home Development Trust. This request has been considered by Nithsdale Area Committee on the 11th of November, and we will receive an update on the recommendation. Fiona Dobney is here to assist if members have any questions. Before we proceed to questions, can I ask Fiona to advise the committee on the recommendation from Nithsdale Area Committee?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'll just read from the minute of Nithsdale Area Committee what members agreed last week. So members agreed to recommend option 1 to Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee that a community asset transfer be approved for the land detailed in Appendix 1 of the report for a sum of £1 to Kirkconnell Keller Home Development Trust, subject to the inclusion of a clawback clause to protect the council should the group decide to sell the land for profit, as well as a further clause that should the Kirkconnell Keller Home Development Trust fail to secure the required funding to undertake the project within the next 7 years, that the land would revert back to the council.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll open up to members. Stephen?
Just on I suppose a technical point, but I mean, are we able to agree the transfer and then confirm which conditions or clauses we'd want to include at this committee in light of the recommendations at Nithsdale Area Committee?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Are we able to determine whether or not we go ahead with the community asset transfer and then determine the conditions, or is it all in a package? So obviously, in light of the Nithsdale Area Committee recommendations, we may take the same or a similar or slightly different view at this committee and go ahead on a certain basis, but we could agree the transfer and then determine the conditions. It was just to make sure that we don't miss them.
I think realistically, the way the recommendations are set out at the moment is you sort of agree all as a package, if you like, but I know it's something that is under consideration through the a review on CAT transfers and actually how we lay out the recommendations. So all of a package, I would say at this moment in time. Is there any other questions or comments from members? No. So we will move to the recommendations. First of all, to consider the Kirkconnell and Keller Home Development Trust. Although nobody spoke about it, I'm sure we've all read the business plan and considered it. 2, to note the recommendation of Nithsdale Area Committee in relation to the transfer request, which was as outlined by Fiona. And item number 3, I am happy to agree to and propose that we agree to the CAT transfer request with the 2 conditions attached to that transfer. Happy to proceed on that basis and agree that recommendation. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 13 is the Kirkconnell Community Trust Community Asset Transfer Request for land in a car park at Church Street, Kirkconnell. This report presents members with a proposed community asset transfer for the land and car park at Church Street, Kirkconnell. Details in the appendices to the Kirkconnell Development Trust. This request has been considered by Wigton Area Committee on the 4th of November 2020, and their recommendation is set out paragraph 3.6 of this report. Kerry Monteith is here to assist if members have any questions, and I'll open it up to member debate. Any contribution from members? Ronnie?
There has been some talk about BT. They have an exchange within that land, and part of the business case, I believe, is for rental income from BT for that land for this particular application for CAT transfer. And I also believe that BT would be willing to buy that land for where the exchange is on, and not the other part, obviously. But do we have any more information, or how do we go forward with this?
Kerry?
So, thank you, Chair. Kirkconnell Development Trust would be looking for rental income from BT for the land. The land would be part of, it has been considered as part of their business case. If that income wasn't available to the trust, then it would pose some difficulties in them progressing at the speed which they would have hoped to enable them to fulfil their kind of community plan.
So I suppose in the back of that, there's in my understanding is that, reading the paper, that the council at this moment in time does not actually receive an income from BT for the generator. So then, what would change that the trust feel that they would get an income?
So the trust had been under the impression that an income was being received. They weren't aware that the council didn't receive any income from BT because of the BT building is sat on the land for a significant time. They would obviously engage with BT directly should the land be transferred to themselves, and engage with BT to establish a rental for the land.
David Ingalls.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, while I support community empowerment and community asset transfer, and I think it's fantastic what these groups do within their communities and for their communities, this one throws up a bit of a question mark. The hall itself sits with 2 or 3 parking spaces outside the front. And if you look at the business plan, it pretty much leaves the hall as, redundant. So if we give that land away and there are no parking rights, then it restricts what the council can do with that building. And whilst I would support an asset transfer, I think there needs to be something here that protects the asset for the council, albeit whether it's for sale, for housing use or whatever it may be. I think there still needs to be something built in there that protects the asset for the council. I wouldn't like to see this turning into just a derelict property similar to one in the town centre in Stranraer. I think that's something we need to look closely at, Chair.
Jane.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I must admit, on reading this, that the first thing that you think about is the capital asset, and I think it is vanishingly unlikely that the council would ever sell this. It's an important part of property in the middle of Cocum, and I just don't think that probably we would actually realistically have any thoughts of realising that capital sum. But nevertheless, I'm afraid I didn't find the business plan persuasive. And I'm very interested to hear a local view of the actualities on the ground with respect to the hall. So at this stage, yes, of course I'm sympathetic to people running their own shows and leveraging in money. That's absolutely right from out with the region. But with respect to the business plan, as I say, I didn't find it persuasive. It's not yet clear enough as to what they expect to do with it and how they expect to make advantage with this particular piece of land. So a lot of talk about the shop, but not reflecting how they are going to use this piece of land. In the future, I would suggest it might well be the case, as a heavy hint, that I would look much more favourably upon a long lease on this particular piece of property. But at this point, no, I don't think it's correct.
Okay, I have Katie.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I'm listening to the debate here, and obviously as a member of the Wigtonshire Area Committee, we had a debate on this prior to FPT. Now, the issue in regards to the hall was brought up at committee in Wigtonshire. However, I'll repeat what I said at that point. We're not looking at the hall. If you look at the map on page 217, the hall is a separate entity to the car park. And while the community may use the car park to access the hall, the request is to transfer the car park to the community. So this is not being transferred to a private developer or any private organisation. This is for the community. So I would just reiterate my support to the community, which I stated at the Wigtonshire Area Committee, and I would look to approve this asset transfer. Certainly looking at the business plan on page 222, it states that there is changes to the car park and looking at the derelict garages to resurface the car park, and certainly it would maybe be useful to know how much funding has the council put into this property over the last, say, 10 years, because my understanding is there has been absolutely no investment in this area, and the community are looking at this asset and saying this is something that we would like to do. And just to reiterate, this is not a private sale, this is back to the community so they can have control of their own assets. So I would just like to say that I would support the transfer of that, and I would propose a motion that we agree with the Wigtonshire Area Committee with the option to transfer. Thank you.
We've got quite a few people wanting to speak. So first of all, Gail.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a sympathy with Councillor Maitland and Ingall's position. The business case to me at the moment doesn't particularly stack up, and I do think that to transfer the asset at this stage is very much going to restrict any future use of the hall. The one thing that I do query, again, Councillor Maitland mentioned the potential of a lease, which may be more favourable. Some of the things that they're planning to do with the asset at the moment, we've done in other parts of the region. We've got electric charging points in Moffat, which were organised by a community group and didn't involve us having to actually sell a piece of ground to them. So I have a sympathy. I am not minded to allow this to go forward at the moment. I don't feel that it's a fully developed plan, and I just think they maybe need to go away and have a look at it again. But I'll listen to the rest of the debate before I form a full opinion.
Yep. Dick.
Thanks, Chair. I think there's been quite a lot of concern raised by members across the board here, and perhaps we should follow Councillor Maitland's and Councillor McGregor's advice that we take again. Business plan isn't very good. They don't know whether they'll get income from BT or not. I don't think that if they do get income, I don't think it'll be minimal experience. So I think we should take it back and look at it again and come back with a better plan.
Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose going back to the points that Councillor Ingall's brought up first. So I think there is potential. So I think David maybe alluded to the George Hotel in Stranraer, and we have a number of these type of buildings across the region. Certainly have them over here in the Easter region as well. So the last thing we want to do is make a decision today that would potentially lead to that effect. So is there other ways, other means in which we can realise the maximum potential capital receipt in regards to, I would imagine, the village hall, the public hall that's there. So these two are interlinked. If this local community organisation is only really looking to take on this to see improvements to the car park, it's disgraceful that the council hasn't actually stood up and put investment in regards to that particular car park. If they feel this is the only route that they can achieve that's unhelpful to say the least. But going back to the points that have been raised already, certainly support community organisations like this taking on projects like this. It's the right thing for them to be doing. Totally support that. Hear what the area committee is saying over at Wigtonshire, and they support this, and keen to hear from further local members on what they say. But if we make a decision today to go forward and transfer this as it stands, one thing that I haven't got an answer to is there is a cause and effect to every decision that we make, Chair, and that is, so what will happen to the public hall? Will that be a detriment to that because of the lack of car parking provision? I don't know. That's one big thing, one big question for me at this moment in time. What will the cause and effect be to that public hall? Will it become a redundant building and end up something like the George Hotel? That's not an exaggeration in any terms. 10 or 15 years time from now, that building could be in a similar state. So I need to understand quite clearly because there's such close links between the two, what is the potential cause and harm to that particular building going forward.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in there. I would like to back up Casey Hagman's
statements earlier on, I would probably second her. I don't believe that we've got any thoughts of actually changing the car park too much, apart from doing some investment into the car park. As far as the car park goes, there's no plans on developing it to change it away from the use of a car park. So I think if we could put it into community hands, let them get on with it, see how they do. At the end of the day, that they won't have to generate a massive amount of income to finance this. So I think that if we can show this model as being worthwhile, it would look good for the rest of the region if we can get rid of some of our car parks in the community and let them deal with it. Because we've not invested in this car park. It's littered with potholes. It's got boats and things that have sat there for years on end, abandoned. I think that it'd be good for us to maybe show a bit of leadership here and let the community lead it.
Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a little bit of a question about the BT exchange status. So, would we know, given that this is effectively a tenant on our asset, or a squatter, if we're not charging any rent, are they bound by any lease that would have to continue to if the asset were to transfer into different hands? So, does their arrangement sort of exist in perpetuity, or is there no arrangement, in which case not only have we maybe not invested in it, we've also opted not to choose to get an income for it? Would that have to then be renegotiated by the community group? Because I'm just not clear, obviously that's part of the business case, but I'm not clear from the report what the status of our arrangement at the moment is with BT in terms of rental agreements.
Kerry, or somebody?
Hi there, Nick Lane should be with us, and
I'm
he
here.
is. Oh, okay, so he can answer that question.
Morning, councillors. The ownership or the tenure of the BT exchange came to light probably 2.5, 3 years ago. BT contacted the estates team to say, we've looked at our records, we have no formal tenure. We'd like to investigate A, renting the property, or B, purchasing it. And then they flipped and flopped between buying and renting. And then the first application under community asset transfer for the hall came along, and we were obliged to put any sale or rental of the BT exchange on hold. So that's the position at the moment. If this does not go through, then the council would feel obliged to negotiate further with BT and settle it one way or the other.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, for that information. So at the moment, there's no encumbrance, if you like, on any potential new owner negotiating a lease with BT, because there isn't one. And in fact, it sounds like the only effort to actually instigate a lease has come from the tenant and not the landlord.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I don't have any more speakers. I think that there's... Oh, sorry. Jock?
I don't understand how there's a building there, it's in use by a firm who could pay for it, and that is not being cut off from this asset transfer. Surely it's quite logical for that piece of land surrounding that building to be hived off separately to the user. And if the user eventually moves out and knocks or takes the building down, then the land can be transferred to whoever has the car park at that time. But it seems a bit of a nonsense that a business can have a building on a site and all of a sudden he sell the land underneath it or give it away. I think that's a bit of a nonsense. So I think BT need to be contacted and asked what their long-term plans are for that area. And it may be that within 2 or 3 years they're going to close that exchange anyway.
Nick?
BT's current requirement is to have an exchange in Kirkham for the foreseeable future. We had negotiated a rental price and a capital a cost as well, if they were minded to buy it.
Okay, David.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the point that Councillor Hagman made about it being two separate entities doesn't work for me. I'm afraid I think that hall and that car park are interlinked. They're both owned by the council, and the hall relies heavily on that car park whenever there are any functions. So separating the two in an asset transfer for me is, in my view, wouldn't be the best way to go. And having said that, I would table an amendment, if that's possible, to say that we get our asset transfer team to go back and liaise with the trust and review their business plan and have a look at how it may benefit them to take the hall as well as the car park as one package. Given when you look at places like Whitthorn, who are levering hundreds of thousands of pounds into existing buildings and bringing them back into use, I think that would be a much better way to go. So I'm happy to table that amendment if that's okay.
We can come back to amendments and proposals soon. Tommy?
Thanks, Chair. I agree with what's just been said. And I don't think we can separate these two items, the car parking area and the hall. The hall traditionally has been the heart of the village. But the car parking it takes on is from the back of the hall. If this is taken away, it makes the hall very difficult to use as anything. The community can't buy the hall just now, as I understand it, because of the sheer cost it would take just to put it wind and watertight. So I think to separate the two this time would be wrong.
Yeah, I think there's, a couple of points that do need to be made on the back of this. I do feel, I appreciate what Kate said, that, this is a CAT transfer for the car park, but it is the community group themselves who have referred, on page 222, the car park, quoting from the business plan, the car park was essential to the hall and will be essential to the shop. So it is actually the community group who, are sort of requiring us to actually discuss about the impact on the hall and on other facilities, because they themselves have recognised, I think, the point that is being made by a number of elected members here. I think what would be quite, I see that Kerry Monteith's got her hand up to comment. I think there is, Ian Criller's made a point about the impact of proceeding with this CAT transfer and the impact of that on the hall. I'm not going to expect anybody to have a crystal ball, but Kerry, if you're able to reflect on that point, and if you do think there would be an impact, and then I appreciate that David Ingalls has came in with an amendment, but I think it'd be quite useful if Liz Manson is able to come in just on the actual process. I'm mindful that this is a stage where we do need to make it, where we usually would make a decision, but if there is grounds within our process to take forward David's proposal. So first of all, Kerry.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to say that the original expression of interest was for the village hall and for the car park and the land surrounding the hall. Obviously, the community trust has been working with other agencies and has sought advice from DTAS and Cretan Initiative and various architects, and they are not able to take on the hall. It would pose a burden on the community. Regrettably for them, they did, obviously it's, it has sentimental value, it has memories, and they regrettably were unable to feasibly take on the hall. They have no intention of turning the car park into anything other than a car park. Their intention is to upgrade that space for the community and for the benefit of the community. They believe that the car park in the hands of the community would therefore always be able to support the community should there be a sale of the hall and development for housing, etc., that potential land, if it wasn't in the hands of the community, could be turned into something else. There is a church across the road, car parks used for access to the church. So it is their vision that the land would always remain as a car park and be available to the community to use.
Okay, and if Liz is on the call, I'll ask her to come in on that advice on the particular proposal from Councillor Ingalls.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I think the recommendations are set out in the report for you, and it's quite in order for the committee to agree certain conditions or the approach that it wishes to take. So Councillor Ingalls' proposal, yes, is perfectly acceptable to be considered as part of our procedure.
Thank you. I've got Ronnie.
Thank you. A couple of things, Chair. Would it be possible to put in a condition of access to parking for the hall and, you know, the potential of the church as well, as a condition within the, you know, passing it over to the Development Trust? And also, Nick mentioned a negotiated rental, and I'm not asking him because it will be private just now, rental income from the exchange and a selling price, if necessary, to for that land, for the exchange. Is that part of the, you know, would that be possible to negotiate with this trust on that basis of the same rental income or not? And is that part of their business plan that they're putting forward?
Kerry?
So the trust obviously aren't aware of any rental income or how much that would be that the council are in receipt of or not, as the case may be. They would enter negotiations with BT should the land be transferred to them for a rental.
Just on that, Chair, basically what I'm saying is, would it be possible, you know, whatever decision this committee makes, for BT to have the same rental to that trust or not?
I suppose it would be difficult to do that if we haven't secured a rent with them. You would probably essentially be ensuring that BT get it for nothing forever if we were to do that. Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just looking in terms of the report in front of us. If we are not to transfer this car park to the community, and that's what the committee decides, is it possible that we can actually then, as the FPT committee, agree not to transfer, but look at what investment we as a local authority can make? Because, you know, if it's the will of the community to not transfer this car park, when the community are wanting to upgrade it and actually invest, what are we as a local authority willing to do? Because, you know, my understanding is there has been little to no investment in this property. So if we're not going to transfer it to the community to invest, are we as a local authority going to commit to explore options to find ways to resurface this car park and to look at the derelict garages that are on there? Because while, you know, I appreciate it may not be the will of the committee to transfer this piece of land, what are we going to do with it, I think needs to be answered. So I guess I would just ask maybe governance, is it within our gift that we can, if we are to refuse this application, can we attach that we would seek to get clarity on what investment we as a local authority can put into this property?
It wouldn't be in the delegations of this committee. It would be for for the local members to take up with the Communities Directorate. But Nick, have you got any further advice you want to give on that?
Just to say that if we do transfer the car park to the trust, then the BT exchange will go with it, and it would be up to the trust to either negotiate with BT to either receive rent or to sell the exchange site to them.
Nick Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't disagree with anything you said, Chair. I think the Director just wanted to come in on something.
Lorna?
Thank you, Chair. I think the request that Councillor Higgins outlined is out with the delegation of this committee, as you've confirmed, and the business in front of you is about the CAT transfer decision. And I don't think further decisions or other decisions that Council might wish to make in relation to the property should feature in relation to that decision. I don't think that's within the community asset transfer policy, and absolutely it's a matter for members to pick up in Communities Committee.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The focus seems to be on the car park. I have no issues at all with a community group taking on the car park. My issue is that we are not left as a council with an asset that is worthless and we do not invest in, and it falls into disrepair more than it has done. If we can protect that asset by part of that car park being hived off to go along with that asset if it's ever sold, then that would probably tick the boxes for me. You know, there is, within the business plan, there is a recommendation that they're going to build small workshop units. So they're going to be work vans in and out or whatever, you know. They're going to put electric charge points in, which will cut down the number of parking spaces. So, as I say, the focus for me is on the town hall and that asset and the protection of that asset from the council's perspective, and how we can get the most for that asset if we're going to have to sell it as a standalone item.
Okay, Gail?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Ingalls has just covered part of the point with retaining an element of the car park and keeping that connected to the hall. I think that would probably give me a little bit more comfort. But I suppose it's just to get clarity on why the community group have to buy it. Why are we not looking at least, because as I said before, we've got precedent right across the region where we've got community-run facilities that sit on council land and operate very well and enable those community groups to via in external funding where required. But we've never sold them the land. They have them on a 5, 10, 15, 20-year lease basis. So I don't really understand why it has to be sold. And I think that that's the complication that a lot of us are having at the moment is getting rid of the asset completely, when that community group could do almost exactly the same thing to the site under a lease agreement. So maybe some understanding from an officer as to why lease was not considered.
Kerry?
Thank you, Chair. Under the Community Empowerment Act, obviously, it's to empower communities through their ownership of properties across our region. So the group themselves were the ones that wished to progress with the community asset transfer to purchase the land, and at least they didn't consider a lease.
Ian?
Thanks, Chair. It's probably been covered. Probably, I'd be keen to see it moving towards some kind of recommendation. But on the back of what Councillor Hadman said, I do believe this transfer is probably motivated by the immediate improvements to that car park because of the lack of investment through the council. I think that should be deferred for further consideration, so we can have a more detailed discussion about this particular project and community asset transfer away from this committee, Chair. Thank you.
I'm keen to try and draw it to a close, but I have a number of speakers still wanting to come in. Jock?
Obviously, this is going to cost money, and there's no indication on these pages as to how they can attract money. Is it our business or no? I suppose that's really the question.
I mean, Jock, it's for the group themselves to put that in their business plan, and obviously in this case they haven't. Kerry, is there anything you want to say on the back of that?
Obviously, the group are a community trust, so they would draw down funding, which they can't do under, if they were to lease the building, lease the land, potentially they would draw down additional funding to carry out the works. There's also a local a local wind farm fund available to organisations within Kirkcallam, and they would be looking to apply to that fund, which wouldn't be available to the council should it be in council ownership.
Okay, Tommy.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. Just to say, I mean, I honestly believe that the council's abdicating their responsibility that they have for this land, these properties. I mean, these properties are not viable at the moment, in particular the hall, as a community asset because of the condition they're in. We own them as a council. We own that. We own the car park. We should be putting them into decent, serviceable condition.
Okay, Stephen.
It's maybe just to double check the advice we got from Lorna earlier, but clearly what we've got in front of us, despite how we might wish to carve this up and sort of address the council's failings really in maintaining this piece of land and getting a lease agreed with BT over the decades that they've been there, I take it, irrespective of what we may choose to do at communities or at local area or at any other committee, all we're able to actually competently do today within the delegation is decide whether or not this car park is marked out in the appendix gets transferred or not, and which conditions to attach if we go ahead. So can I just double check with Lorna or Nick, whoever's appropriate, could we, if we wanted to, competently recommend divvying up this lot into different pieces at this committee, or is that for another committee? Or is it just what we've got in front of us, that's what we decide, everything else is up for a fight at another committee?
Lorna.
I'll answer that, but I'll ask Liz to come in terms of the community asset transfer policy and procedure of the council. But the proposal in front of you is for a CAT transfer under the conditions that the community group have asked for, and any conditions that the members wish to apply to that at this committee. So it's either to accept or reject that community asset transfer, and if you accept it, any conditions you'd apply. So I think Liz has already said that there's opportunities within that for members if they wish, but I think if we were to, you have to address the question of the CAT transfer in entirety, but I'll let Liz come in on the specifics.
Liz?
Yes, absolutely. Just to confirm that the group has submitted a request to you in that format, and if you were looking perhaps to package it up in a different way, that would be a different community asset transfer request. I know Colin Freeman is also in the call, and I think he was looking to come in perhaps with some specific advice for you also.
Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Liz. Yeah, our CAP procedure is quite clear, and one of the options available to members is to reject the application because of insufficient business plan and request that officers continue to work with the community transfer body to submit a renewed application. So if members do choose to refuse the request, there is an avenue for us to continue to work with the group for them to look at other options.
Okay. We have reached a stage where nobody else wants to come in. Oh, Ivor.
Chair, if we refuse it today, can we sell the site to BT, benefit from that, then transfer it afterward?
Liz or Colin?
In terms of the sale, I would ask Nick to be able to respond to that. But in terms of the CAT and the CAT procedure, if it was refused today, then we would hope to look to work with the group to revisit the shape of their application and progress that forward.
Okay. Are you happy with that, Ivor?
Chair, my understanding is that BT had spoken to us, and because of the CAT transfer process, weren't able to take this any further. We've stopped it because we're going to refuse it today. Therefore, can we then actually sell or lease start the process of the sale or lease from today or 48 hours from today, and actually benefit from that? Then when the renewed application comes in, then that process is out of the way.
I mean, that would be my understanding of it. Colin?
it would very much depend on whether the community group submitted an appeal against the decision when they have 20 working days to do that. If they do submit an appeal, any prohibitions that are currently in place on the asset would remain in place. If they don't submit an appeal, then the prohibitions are not in place, and negotiations through property and colleagues could progress, I would imagine.
Okay, so I will move to the recommendations now. Katie Hagman had made a proposal, and David Ingles. Sorry, Ian, is that you wanting to come in?
You're fine, Chair. I'll wait until you've said what you've got to say. Go on.
David Ingles has also put in a proposal. Is there any other proposals at this stage that anybody intends to submit? The only thing I was going to ask if we could maybe take a short 5-minute adjournment so that the wordings of those proposals could be submitted to Nick, and we can make sure that everybody has a sight of those written proposals, if members are happy with that, and if Katie and David would be happy to submit those to Nick. Ian, are you wanting to come in at this stage?
I think your 5 or maybe even 10-minute recess is a good idea. I do think what Colin just outlined is a potential option as well. Maybe we could come back with that. I think there's a willingness. Certainly sounds like for me that this committee wants the council to move forward in some way with this particular project. It's just how do we get to that point? It's a shame we hadn't had the same level of discussion beforehand as what the area committees had, but how do we do that as a service committee? Anyways, I do think it's the right way forward, Chair, to have a quick deferral. We can set up through teams, have a quick discussion, speak to some local members as well, and come back with a formal one that hopefully we'll get agreement with. Okay, so I will take a 10-minute adjournment, and if the proposers of the two proposals could sort of submit those either on Teams or directly to Nick, and we will make sure that they are shared with all members, and we will come back in approximately 10 minutes' time.
Okay, so members, we will make a start. So we have a motion from Councillor Hagman, seconded by Councillor Giusti. We have an amendment from Councillor Ingalls, seconded by Councillor McGregor. Is there any other proposals? Ronnie?
Thank you, Chair. Thought careful about this, but my proposal is that we reject the cut transfer on the basis that there's uncertainty over the business case, in particular the income from BT. Also, the loss of public car park for members of the community. But on top of that, I would request that officers continue to work with the community group to realise its ambitions in the future.
Okay, I see that Katie wants to speak, but I'm also conscious that there's been a little bit of chat in the meeting chat function. So what I will do is that there's now 3 proposals. There's a motion, an amendment, and a counter amendment. I will
have a seconder.
I'm happy to second you, Ronnie. I will let Katie come in and speak, but at the same time, I'll also let David come in and speak if he wishes to on the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just really for some clarity because, just for those who are not on the council, on the chat function where the proposals have been written, obviously Councillor Nicholson hasn't proposed or written down that counter amendment, so that would be useful to see. But on page 214, it states quite clearly that we have 2 options, and one is to agree and the other is to not transfer. And if we're not to transfer, it states for the reason to be made clear. So can I just get clarity what the clear rationale is to not transfer for each of the amendment and the counter amendment?
Well, I think the counter amendment demonstrated that, but I will offer David the chance to come in. I think as well, David has obviously put his amendment on the basis of the advice we received from Liz Manson. So I'll ask Liz to maybe come in on the back of David's point if required.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the counter amendment's pretty much the same as my amendment, that we refuse it on the basis that our community asset transfer team is going to liaise with the trust and look at their business plan and try to help them achieve what it is they're trying to achieve. Councillor Hagman has asked me to stipulate the reason why we would refuse this community asset transfer. And my answer to that would be that to agree the community asset transfer would be to devalue the hall as a council-owned asset, which would make it unfit for sale and redevelopment.
Okay. So I will ask Nick to read out the motion, amendment and counter amendment.
Before I did that, Chair, I was just wishing to explore the subtleties of the difference between the amendment and the counter amendment. Essentially, the end result is the same, and
I think the counter amendment sort of makes it crystal clear what the reasons are for refusing the CAT transfer, which I think we're encouraged to detail when we're disagreeing to a CAT transfer, both in the reports we receive and in the legislation. And that is predominantly the reason for our main difference there. I do see that Gail wants to come in.
Yeah, very briefly, Chair. And again, I have a sympathy with Councillor Nicholson's proposals in respect of BT as well. And I'm looking to David and Ronnie because I do think that we can wrap both these, the amendment and the counter, together. I think the key thing is that we're trying to find a way through this to assist the community group. But as things stand at the moment, I couldn't agree to that absolute through a community asset transfer. So it's really just trying to get to a stage where they have the committee support to enable engagement with the community to try and reach their aspirations through whichever means. But as things stand, I couldn't have agreed to that. So as I say, it's looking to David and Ronnie to see if we can incorporate the counter in the amendment. Thank you.
I'll first of all bring in Jane.
Sorry, thank you very much indeed. I think I've had the clarification I require. Thank you.
Ronnie?
I mean, they are pretty near, but my proposal is that we reject the cut request on the basis that there is uncertainty over the business case, in particular income from BT. The other bit, the loss of a public car park for members of the community, the bit you could add in there is which would ultimately isolate hall users and request that officers continue with the community group to realise its ambitions, if that's okay with the seconder.
So at this stage, you know, I'm happy to just proceed to the vote if members are happy to do so. Right, Nick.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask the mover of the amendment, Councillor Ingalls, in the light of the clarification provided by Councillor Nicholson, does he still wish to proceed with his amendment as it is drafted, or do we have an agreement that the counter amendment encapsulates the views of all members who don't necessarily support the motion as it stands?
I'm sorry to get bogged down in this one, but the BT issue, I think, would be beneficial to the community to deal with. I think they could get, you know, the rental income for that piece of ground that building sits on would be better spent by the community than it would be by the council. Hence my hesitation on this one. That's the only issue that I've got here. Other than that, Ronnie and I are both in the same vein, I think. So yeah, I think we could probably amalgamate both and take one or the other. I'm happy with either.
I mean, I've now got a couple of people wanting to speak. I'm sort of keen to stress, you know, we are looking at the CAT transfer, you know, in line with comments, Helen, with the decision today is a CAT transfer. Obviously, if the committee agrees to transfer, there'll be a number of consequences around the land and BT and all the rest of it. At the same time, if we disagree to the CAT transfer, there will be similar consequences but in a different vein, and they will have to be followed through. You know, the main decision in front of us is the CAT transfer. I will very quickly bring in Richard Brodie.
Thanks, Chair. I think the only thing I'd like added to Councillor Nichols' amendment is the future, to allow us to look at the future of the hall, because that should be an important part of the way forward. So if Councillor Nicholson would add something about the future of the hall in his amendment, that would be good. That would ensure my support.
I would caution that that isn't within the delegations of the committee, and you know, I would reaffirm we are looking at the CAT transfer request. Both the amendment and counter amendment do say that, you know, the committee would request that officers would work with the community group and groups in question, but we note that that is a request and doesn't solely fit in with the delegations to this committee. David Ingalls.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would prefer to stick to my amendment on this one. I think it's fairly straightforward. We're going to go back and talk to the Community Trust to work our way forward on this. And I've stated fairly clearly exactly why I think it should be refused. And I've done that as per your recommendations. I've sent my amendment to Nick, and we have that on the table. So I would prefer to stick to my amendment.
Ronnie?
Yes, just on Councillor Brodie, yes. I mean, the fact that request officers to continue to work with the community groups to realise its ambitions, obviously that would then entail, some aspect of the whole discussions as well, but, that's not up to this committee to decide.
Okay, we will proceed to the vote. Nick, can you read out the motion, amendment and counter-amendment, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we have a motion proposed by Councillor Hagman, seconded by Councillor Giusti, which is to support the transfer as per the recommendations of Wigton Area Committee. We have an amendment proposed by Councillor Ingalls and seconded by Councillor McGregor, that the request for the asset transfer of the car park be refused and that the asset transfer team revisit the trust business plan and asset transfer requests to take account of the future use or sale of the hall. And we have a counter amendment from Councillor Nicholson, proposed by Councillor Wilson, and that is to reject the transfer in view of the uncertainty over the business case, including the potential for income from BT, concerns over the loss of a public asset in respect of the car park, and further ask that the CAT team work further with the trust to develop a suitable proposal.
Yes, well, the wording was actually request officers to continue work with the community group to realise its ambitions.
Yep. Okay. So, if we move to the vote now, then, Chair. Councillor Wilson.
Counter.
Councillor Hagman.
Motion, please.
Chair, point of order. My understanding are
you wish me to take the counter amendment and the amendment,
yes,
and then move to the final vote between the two? Okay.
Yeah, that's the procedure.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so moving to the vote then, which is between the amendment and the counter amendment. Chair.
Counter.
Councillor Hagman.
Abstain.
Councillor Brodie.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Abstain.
Councillor Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson.
Abstain.
Councillor Fairbairn.
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti.
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor Ingalls.
Amendment.
Councillor Johnston.
Amendment.
Councillor Lever.
Counter.
Is that counter?
Counter.
Yep. Councillor McKee. Councillor McClelland.
Abstain.
Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Counter.
Councillor Murray.
Counter.
Councillor Nicholson.
Counter.
Councillor Ronnie's not present. Councillor Sloan.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson.
Abstain.
Okay, so we have 9 members voting in favour of the amendment, 6 in favour of the counter amendment, and 5 abstentions. Therefore, the amendment's carried, and we move on to the vote between the motion and what is now the amendment, and the amendment. Okay, moving to the vote. Chair.
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman.
Motion, please.
Councillor Brodie.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson.
Motion.
Councillor Fairbairn.
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop. Councillor Ingalls.
Amendment.
Councillor Johnston.
Amendment.
Councillor Lever.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor McClelland.
Motion.
Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor Murray.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ronnie is not present. Councillor Sloane. And Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
We have 6 members voting in favour of the motion and 14 in favour of the amendment. Therefore, the amendment is carried.
Thanks very much. We'll move on to agenda item 14, which is a proposed 25-year lease of the former Lockside Library at 30 Lockside Road, Lockside, Dumfries. This report presents members with a proposed 25-year lease for the former Lockside Library detailed in the appendices to the Lift D&G Community Interest Company, in line with the Community Empowerment Act in accordance with the Council's Community Asset Transfer Procedure. This request has been considered by the Nestdale Area Committee on the 11th of November. Derek Hextall is here to assist members with any questions. Before we proceed to member debate, can I ask Derek to advise the committee of Nestdale Area Committee's recommendation?
Afternoon, Chair, afternoon, members. Yes, it was agreed to recommend option 1 to Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee that a 25-year lease is granted for the nominal sum of £1 with no specific conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now open it up to member debate. Ronnie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to support this application. I've known this organisation and worked with them, and with the help and support of the Labour group and other councillors in the area. They do an excellent job in a very tough environment for the residents of that area, and no hesitation but to support that.
Jane?
Very happy to agree with that. I think it's an impressive business plan, and I just also wanted to commend them on their cook to hook or hook to cook process. I thought that was very good, and they could probably come and teach the bampots that litter around Loch Ken quite a bit. So yes, no hesitation in agreeing this. My only question, Chairman, is how much does it cost us to process a transaction? Because frankly, I think probably we ought to be asking people that it's neutral, if you see what I mean, per annum. So if it cost us £30 to process a transaction, that's probably what we should be asking these groups to produce every year. But that's a detail.
I fear that Lindsay Wilson, who I'm sure would have been able to answer that, is gone. I will offer Derek the opportunity, but no pressure.
I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to help, Chair.
I'm sure, Jane, we can get that information to you. Is a valid point. Jock?
Yes, I've pleasure in seconding Councillor Nicholson's motion. They're doing a good job in there. They have done for a number of years, and it's good to see them developing the way they're going, and the help they're giving to the area is really tremendous. Quite happy to support, Chair.
Thank you. Ivor?
Chair, would it not be possible then just to have a lump sum payment for the 25 years, and then that would maybe negate it? We'd only have one payment instead of 30 or 25, sorry.
Well, it's good to know that as a collective we can identify the problems but also come up with the solutions, so we can take that. So I've got no further members wanting to come in. We have, first of all, moving to the recommendations, considered the application. We have noted the recommendation from Area Committee. And number 3 is to agree an option. We have a proposal from Councillor Nicholson and Councillor McKee. Are members happy to agree to the long-term lease? Yep. Excellent. I have no urgent business for today, so thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance.